All right, we have reached rule number 9 from St. Ignatius's Discernment of Spirits. And in rule number 9, we're continuing to talk at length about how to deal with desolation, since it's the main obstacle for us in our spiritual life. So he's got a lot of wisdom for us to glean from him. And so in his 9th rule, he's going to give us the 3 main reasons of why we may find ourselves desolate. Remember in the 6th rule, he talked about how we should examine ourselves and try to understand where the desolation is coming from. So this will give us some insight, too, to be able to assist us in that practice in desolation of examining where this may have come from. So he gives 3 main reasons. The first reason is our fault, but the other 2 are not. The other 2 are reasons that God will use desolation. Remember, he doesn't directly give desolation. He allows it to come to us, but he has reasons for it. And so the other 2 are his reasons. The first one, these are his words. He says, there are 3 principal causes for which we find ourselves desolate. The first is because we are tepid, slothful, or negligent in our spiritual exercises, and so, through our faults, spiritual consolation withdraws from us. So, the first reason is our fault. We have done something to cause the experience of consolation to some kind of barrier, some kind of block to allowing God to bestow on us consolations. So, tepid, slothful, or negligent in our spiritual exercises, he says. So we've gotten lazy in some of the spiritual things. We haven't kept up. Remember, that's one of the things we learned previously. Don't make changes to spiritual commitments in times of desolation. But if we have done that, if we've been failing to do those things, that's why we may begin to experience the lack of consolation. So, and it should make sense, because the spiritual life is about a relationship with God. And so, if we haven't been working on that relationship with him, then it may not be surprising that we don't experience his presence. We don't feel his presence there. If we haven't given him the opportunity, if we haven't put ourselves in prayer, we haven't given him the opportunity to reveal himself, then it's not surprising that we're not experiencing him because we haven't opened ourselves to receive it. Maybe we haven't been praying as much. Maybe we've gotten caught up in all sorts of other things that we do, all sorts of other distractions in our life. Maybe we have certain attachments to certain sins, certain vices in our life that are getting in the way, right, of us being able to follow and recognize the Lord. So it's not surprising that we should begin to feel as though we're separated from him. Remember, though, he's not actually absent. It's more like we've made ourselves absent from him. God, of course, is still present. It's just there's that kind of barrier. Of course, once we recognize that, if we realize that's what's going on and that it is our fault, then it's fairly easy to rectify. We have the sacrament of reconciliation to help us with that if it's our sinfulness. Or begin again the practices of prayer, right? Just because we've failed to do it in the past, we can, we begin again each day with them. So, of course, with God's help to be able to persevere in that. So that's the first one. The first reason that we may feel desolation, it's our fault. We have been failing to do the things we ought to be doing in our spiritual life with the Lord, and so that's why we don't experience this closeness. But that's only the first of 3. And the other 2 aren't our fault. So that means when we experience desolation, that's why I've said before, there's no shame in desolation in and of itself. Right? We all are going to experience it, and it may not be our fault of why we're experiencing it. So let's read the second one. The second thing he says, the second is to try us and see how much we are and how much we extend ourselves in his service and praise without so much payment of consolations and increased graces. So what is he saying there? So he's saying that in the second reason, God is allowing us to undergo times of desolation as a kind of test of our love. In particular, do we love God for who he is, or are we simply faithful and we love God when we get good things from him? think about that, in relationship to human relationships. If you have a friend, but they only want to be around you, they're only there because you have something that they want from you, right? You begin to realize over time that maybe this isn't quite as much of a friend as I thought. They're kind of using me. But isn't that sometimes how we treat God? Right? We go to Him, we have our needs, we ask Him for stuff, and we turn to Him when everything is really, and we're glad when everything's going well. But when everything seems to be going wrong, that's when we just turn and we complain, and it's all God's fault, right? So how are we treating Him? So that's why God will allow us to go through desolation, because He says it helps to test us. How far will we go in serving Him, in continuing to praise Him, and continuing to pray? Will we remain faithful when those good things are taken away? He wants us to love Him for who He is, not just love the good things that He gives us. Think of in terms of that relationship between like parents and children, right? Children certainly, maybe, when they're younger, they want things. But as parents, you've got to help them to grow in a deeper way of love, to love not just for what you get in a relationship, but for the mere fact of the other person. So we can see that this kind of makes sense too, is why God would allow consolations to be removed, because it helps purify and help deepen our love for Him, not just the love for the things that He gives to us. So then, the third reason, he says, to give us true recognition and understanding, so that we may interiorly feel that it is not ours to attain or maintain increased devotion, intense love, tears, or any other spiritual consolation, but that all is the gift and grace of God our Lord, and so that we may not build a nest in something belonging to another, raising our mind in some pride or vainglory, attributing to ourselves the devotion or other parts of the spiritual consolation. So that's quite a lengthy one there. What is he saying in all of that? So he says, to give us true recognition and understanding. This is about our ability to recognize authentic consolations that God Himself is giving. So, I'll give you some story from my own experience. When I was learning about these rules, it was during the summer when I was in the seminary at the Institute for Priestly Formation, and it was during a time of retreat. And so they were teaching us these rules, and they're talking about discernment and how God is speaking to us through our thoughts, our desires, our emotions. And of course, I'm a very scientific kind of thinker going into that, and I'm like, how do you know that that's actually God? That seems kind of subjective. It's like God's speaking to us through thoughts, and it's like, well, how do I know that's actually God speaking, and it's not just me making stuff up? How do I know that? And so that's what I brought to prayer, speaking to the Lord during that retreat, talking, I want to understand this better. I don't think I really understand it. How do I know that, if I'm going to prayer and I feel like your presence is there, how do I know I'm not just making that up? Or that I'm forcing myself to feel good during prayer? How do I know it's actually you? So this was during the beginning time of that retreat, and everything seemed to be going well. It was like I really was enjoying it and felt like God was close and everything. But then there was this transition that happened in the middle of it, where now prayer was dry, difficult, didn't really feel like doing it, felt like God was far away, and my reaction to that was basically like, what did I do wrong? Try to get back to that, right? Okay, I go into prayer. I'm really trying to, all my willpower to make it feel like God's, and that the prayer is good and that God's there, and nothing was happening, right? And so this lasted over a period of time. And finally there was a moment in one of the times of prayer where the thought came to my mind, didn't you ask me to show you what authentic consolation is like? Can't you see that you can't make it happen by yourself? It's my gift. It's my gift alone. And the moment those thoughts came into my mind, suddenly there was this experience again of God's love, His care, and the consolations returned with thinking through that moment. Because He'd done exactly what I'd asked by allowing me to go through desolation so that I could now recognize consolations, authentic ones, when they come. So that's what he's saying in this third one, is that he will allow consolations to be taken away and for us to experience desolation, because then in the desolation, when we strive by our own powers to try to make it return, we find that we can't do it. And that makes it more clear in our minds when those authentic consolations do come, that yes, that is indeed from the Lord, because all we can do is come into the Lord's court, in a sense, place ourselves in the king's court and wait to see if he comes out to greet us. Right? And we come day after day. This is an image from St. Francis de Sales. And some days he may come out, other days he may not. But the days, because we endure through the days where he doesn't, we can recognize more clearly when he does come out that I'm not just fooling myself into thinking this is God. This is an authentic consolation. So to conclude with that, I wanted to share with you, this is a kind of poem that I wrote during that retreat after I experienced this. And I don't know, it doesn't rhyme, but but it's kind of a dialogue, kind of expresses that interior dialogue between the Lord and ourselves and the soul. So like the first verse is God speaking, and then the next verse is me and the soul back and forth, kind of like that, about this experience. So it begins with God's voice. Speak to me, my child. Tell me what is on your heart. How can I hope to begin? Words flow, thoughts flourish, then settle and scatter in the wind of your spirit. Fear not describing me wrongly, nor hold back an attempt for perfection. Rejoice, no one is perfect in my sight, yet you will, because I am. My thoughts, my desires, these ideas about you, concatenations of the Holy Writ, can they be more than categories of my mind? Words are more than names. I am the Word from the beginning. Ideas connect to reality. There is an object to which they intend. Love and peace and joy, these I feel, but do I self-console and place trust in princes? Only I can inflame you with love. Tears of joy of me, watery lament of sin, are my design alone. Where is the rest I knew? Soul's agitation I cannot remove. What have I done for this, my God, my God? The desolate comes not from me, nor need it be by your own fault. Fear not, I am with you. Place your trust in me. I believe, I know. Help my unbelief. Even that is murky in this darkness of the soul. See, you cannot make joy. Brightness is my gift. Disquiet is allowed, that you may know me. I understand. I believe. Thanks and praise forever. Lord, as you return, in all you are here. Be still. Let me love. So next Sunday we will continue with rules 10 and 11. Continues to help us to how to face desolation.